Hey guys, today we are recording a tier list, and this is for all of the non-legendary Pokemon. This is because every other YouTuber has recorded legendary tier lists, and I haven't seen many other tierings for the non-restricted, and they also deserve some love. So we are going to be going over all the Pokemon that have seen competitive play on the online ladder or official tournaments, um, and I had this list over here. This is because everything else below just is way too much, and they're not nearly as viable as some of the other options I have here. For how the ranking works, instead of S, A, B, C, D, we have some more specific tiers. Red would be the very best, orange is strong and flexible, yellow is solid but not as flexible. Lighter shade of yellow is they are better options, but they can still day two. And green is please use better Pokemon. Starting off with the very best, we'll be using Incineroar. This one is honestly debatable, which is kind of weird because he didn't win Worlds. Incin has won Worlds in every format it's been legal in, but this year. And this is because Miraidon won, and Miraidon is a comp that's very aggressive and normally doesn't have Incineroar. But it doesn't mean it's bad. Incin is viable on like every other archetype, in particular like Shadow Rider comps, Tropicos comps, Kaliai's comps, Kyogre comps. You can name them all. And it's just one of the best support pieces in the game, like Fake Out, Knockoff, Parting Shot, all strong pieces. And then the fourth move is usually either Wisp, Flare Blitz, or Helping Hand, depends on your restricted pairing or what you need to check. Like Will-O-Wisp is such good utility versus Ice Riders and Urshifu. And then Fake Out, of course, is just broken. And its typing Fire Dark is so good versus both Calyrex forms. And it's just amazing. Instinct can run a variety of sets. Most common is Safety Goggles, but latest trends have been a Rocky Helmet. And Rocky Helmet Instant's so good in the current format right now. Being able to chip so many physical attackers, like Urshifu, when they carry Focus Sash often, is so nice. And you can cripple them with Wisp. When you Terra, you can not die Surgeon Strikes. You can also live it with EVs. So I think this Mon does it all, and there's no other Mon that does it like Incineroar. So that's the reason why I'm putting it on the very top. Second, I have Ursh. Ursh is very similar. It's paired with a lot of these instant teams, like double Fake Out. Urshifu is one of the strongest things in the game. And yeah, no one does like Ursh. Unseen Fist is broken. Everyone knows that. Hitting for Protect. The water typing is really good. Being able to hit opposing Incineroar, you hit stuff like Chen Pao. You can crit for Zamazenta. It's just really nice. Items are also very flexible. Focus Sash, like I mentioned, is the most common. You can also run something like Choice Scarf, Mystic Water, Choice Band, Safety Goggles even. So many flexible sets. And for Terra types, also very flexible. Like if you're running Focus Sash, you often see Terra Water, or Stellar is a new adaptation post-Worlds. It's like Stellar Close Combat can like one-shot Tropicos if you rip the shell, which is really nice even for Intimidate. You just have so many cool calcs with that. And then you can also go something like Terra Poison for like the Zamazenta matchup if you go Mystic Water. Mystic Water is really nice at killing Chen Pao too. Yeah, Ursh just does it all. It's good versus most restricted and non-restricted, so I'm putting it here. Third is Rillaboom. Again, we talked about double Fake Out, Urshifu. These three together can go on almost any team in the format, and it's just really impressive. Rillaboom is another good secondary Fake Out mon. It's usually most paired with Assault Vest, so you can live any hit really. You take hits better from Calyrex Shadow, take better hits from Miraidon. And speaking of Miraidon, having your own terrain control is so important for the Miraidon matchup. Rillaboom being able to override it to make it weaker is really nice. It's also really good for like other terrain like a DD. Like if you have a Rillaboom, you have a Trick Room matchup. Being able to Fake Out, get the terrain back in front of DD is really good. Yeah, all around just really solid Pokemon. It's also really good versus opposing Urshifu. So just because of the kit it has and how it deals with Miraidon and Urshifu itself and enabling it, I'm putting it for the third here. Fourth is Raging Bolt. This one is, I think, to no surprise to people here. Raging Bolt is good versus both of these guys, Fire, Water, Grass, with the Dragon typing. And the Electric type is really good at one-shotting Urshifu if it's not Focus Sash. If you have Raging Bolt, it's also really good versus like hyper offense teams, normally like with Tornadus. Like Raging Bolt like invalidates Tornursh overall, which is really cool. It beats almost every non-restricted, like the Fire Water Grass, like I said. Stuff like the Ogre Ponds as well. You beat both Wellspring and Heartflame, which is really cool. It's also okay in the versus Miraidon teams because you can use the electric terrain and you Terra to Terra out of your weakness to Fairy and Dragon. It's most commonly paired on Shadow Rider comps as well. You see on some Tropicos and Zama builds, and a lot of times on Kali Ice. So very flexible mon. You can throw it on almost any team, and it beats almost all the non-restricteds. So I'm putting it fourth. For the second tier, Heartflame, it won Worlds. It's one of the strongest flexible pieces, just because of its kit. Follow Me is really strong for redirecting spores, and it's really good at protecting your setup mons. Like, it's usually paired with stuff like Calyrex or Tropicos, because you can Follow Me and set up what you're restricted. It's also really good on these Miraidon comps because you can have Ivy Cudgel to KO other Rillabooms. You can also Follow Me to protect your restricted as well, of course. It's also a really good Tailwind abuser, most commonly paired with stuff like Whimsicott. And yeah, it's a really good support and a strong attacker. The only downside of Ocarpon Heartflame is you can't touch Incineroar. It's able to Tint Cycle you, and you can't hit it for super effective, really. And also stuff like Raging Bolt walls you. So you're not really good versus the dragons and not very good versus Ensign. But it's really good at supporting your other pieces. So, yeah, very flexible mon. Whimsicott, very similar. It won Worlds. Also another strong support piece because of its Prankster ability. Having Tailwind, Encore, and Light Screen in the same kit is amazing. It also got stuff like Sunny Day, so you can have a rain matchup and boost like fire types all around, which is cool. Light Screen is really nice for the Miraidon matchup, as you already are immune to Draco Meteor and you resist Electro Drift. Light Screen is able to just make Miraidon hit way less. So, really important there. It's also really good at enabling Miraidon and your Tailwind abusers. Tailwind plus E-Drift, Tailwind Draco, Tailwind Ivy Cudgel, all strong things. And yeah, I mean, just one of the best support pieces. It won Worlds for a reason. Next is Iron Hands. Again, won Worlds. It's very strong and flexible on these Miraidon comps because it's a Quirk Drive abuser. You abuse the terrain, you get a damage boost. It's really good versus Ice Rider comps because the one that won Worlds, they run min speed. So min speed hands can hit Kali Ice and Trick Room. You have a very strong low kick, 120 base power. So it's a really good Trick Room abuser and countering other posting Trick Room. And it's also really good versus other posting Miraidon. You kind of force them to lock themselves in Dazzling Gleam. If they click Electro Drift, you like just resist it and you take nothing because you have Assault Vest. So just a very bulky mon. And it's super flexible on Iron comps. We've also seen Iron Hands on like Shadow Rider and Ice Rider comps, just because it's good for versus like other like Incineroar versus other stuff like Terapagos. So you don't only see Miraidon, but it's especially good on Miraidon comps. Fluttermane, it's kind of fallen off in usage compared to other formats. Like Fluttermane used to be like 60 top % usage in regulation, like C and D, right? But with the introduction of all the powerful restricteds and stuff like Shadow Rider, it's fallen down a bit, but it's still very, very strong. Just because of how flexible it is on certain comps, like like Zamazenta and Tropicos. Fluttermane can have really good speed control with Icy Wind and Thunderwave, and if you force Terras with Body Press, you can also Shadow Ball the Ghost types for Zamazenta. So you most commonly see it with Zama and Tropicos. It's really good with Tropicos because although it's not really good versus Shadow Rider, Tropicos counter Shadow Rider, so you can give the Tropicos speed control, and you can protect in front of it, and then you can have Tropicos deal with Shadow Rider, which is really cool. Fastest speed control in the game, basically, with that boost energy. Icy Wind and Thunderwave, really good support options. Moonblast can hit both Urshifu forms, and it's good versus Miraidon and Raging Bolt. Just one of the fastest mons in the game, and it's really good at its job. Next is Chiyu, kind of play right next to Fluttermane, just really good partners as well. Fluttermane is often paired with Chiyu, just because you have strong Icy Wind plus Heat Wave, strong Beads of Ruin. You boost your damage by dropping opposing special defense. The fire typing is really good versus stuff like Rillaboom. And I mentioned before how Fire Dark is so good versus both Calyrex forms. So you're good versus both, you resist both, and you can KO both, actually, with Overheat or Dark Pulse. Snarl is also really good utility at lowering damage. It also gets moves like Taunt, Taunt support Shiyu has seen some usage, and it almost cut worlds, I believe, or it did cut worlds. But most commonly, you see either the support Cloak set, the Focus Sash set, or Choice Scarf set. It's most commonly used on hyper offensive teams, but sometimes you see it as a support piece with a bulky taunt set. The main downside of Shiyu is the inconsistency, just because it has almost all of its moves can miss. You're kind of forced to run Dark Pulse as your only move, just because Heat Wave and Overheat are quite nice because the spread damage overheats a nuke. So sometimes you're limited to that, but sometimes Shiyu doesn't even run Dark Pulse. Sometimes they run Heat Wave, Snarl, Overheat, and then you have all moves that can miss. So it's a little inconsistent, but it's really good at its job when it lands. Cornerstone here, this is also a strong flexible pick. Similar to its counterpart, you have that follow me ability, follow me button, and you can stop spores, you can protect your restricted, so we already know that. The main difference is the sturdy ability. Sturdy means you can live at least one hit, so you can live at least one Glacial Lance, which is really cool. So it's better at kind of click and follow me, or better at trading damage because it's guaranteed to live one hit, unlike Heart Flame. It's very fast. They usually just run max speed Jolly, so you can often Ivy Cudgel Heart Flames before any move because they often go bulkier. It's really good versus Incineroar, even though Intimidate you're doing more than half of Cudgel still. Good versus Shiyu, good versus Ursh because they carry Power Whip. It's good versus Calyrex Ice. It's just a really strong support piece, and it deals damage back to a lot of other threats. The main downside to it is that it only has really one set. Follow Me, Ivy Cudgel, Power Whip, Spiky Shield. Sometimes it just does anything but follow me, and that's a good thing. But you can't really throw in every team ever. It's most commonly used on either Tropicos builds. Sometimes you see it on Cali Shadow builds, and Cali Ice are the most common comms. It's not really a big fan of stuff like Mystic Water Ursh, which can one-shot it, and stuff like Zamazenta also gives problems. But overall, it's a really good support partner for a lot of its teammates. Next, we have the Single Strike. My friend likes to call this the bad Urshifu, which is not completely true, but it's definitely a little bit not like worse than the Rapid Strike, just because Incin can wall you a little bit better, just because Intimidate affects close combat more, and then Wicked Blow, resists Incin's resisting that. The main difference between Single Strike and Rapid Strike is that Single is better versus Cali Shadow, while Rapid Strike's better versus stuff like Chen Pao and Zamazenta. So yeah, I would like to say that if you have a weaker Cali Shadow matchup, Single Strike is better. So you can go with that. Single Strike is pretty strong though, because like Terror Dark Wicked Blow is a very spammable button. I think that's a little bit more it's consistent dark damage, which is really good versus both Calyrex forms. The main downside is really just opposing Incineroar, and stuff like Zamazenta is also a little bit harder, just because Body Press can hit you. And also Wicked Blow doesn't do as much back to it. But overall, strong piece, just Rapid Strike's just a little bit more consistent than it. Next is Among Us. Among Us made finals at Worlds, and it's consistent in every format it's in. It's definitely not as good unlike previous formats because of the addition of Heart Flame and stuff like Miraidon preventing Spore, but still very impressive. Being able to spore the Rocky Helmet instance going around because they have drop safety goggles is really nice. So if you can isolate Ogerpon away from Incin, you can spore that slot, which is really cool. And it's really good at stopping Cali Ice in Trick Room. You can spore them in Trick Room to prevent it. Or you can also just use it as a Rage Powder bot. Follow Me is really nice on the Ogerpons, but they don't have an item. With Among Us, you can run Rage Powder with something like Rocky Helmet to break Focus Sashes, which is really good. You can also run Cover Cloak. Cover Cloak's also another good item on it. So oftentimes people counterplay Among Us is like Fake Out. So if you run Cloak, they can't fake you out and you get a free Spore off. Among Us also gets stuff like Pollen Puff, so it's a really good partner for Cali Ice. It's often paired with stuff like Zamazenta, and sometimes you see Tropicos as well, and Cali Shadow. It's really good enabling your restricteds, just like every other Follow Me abuser or Rage Powder mon. But yeah, only weakness is really Miraidon and Firepon, but on other comps, I think it can still work. And as long as you isolate the Miraidon and Firepon, Among Us is usually good versus the rest of your teammates. Friggraph, won Worlds. It's a trend. All of the Miraidon partners are basically here. And Fergraph, it's just so strong. Being able to block priority when Incinerilla are the top threats is really good. It's also really good at dealing with Kali Shadow Rider, being able to switch from Astro Barrage and be immune to it. It's really good. It has strong support moves like Helping Hand and Trick Room. Helping Hand to make Murata one-shot even AD Rillaboom is really good. Trick Room is really nice at enabling your Iron Hands or reversing Trick Room in a Trick Room matchup. Let's say you're facing Kali Ice, you can reverse the Trick Room in your favor, and then you have the speed control back, which is really good. So you're really good at enabling like fast partners like Miraidon. It's also really good as like a Kali Ice partner as well. That's pretty cool because it kind of helps Kali Ice deal with opposing Kali Shadow better and set up Trick Room for it. So it's mostly coming here with that. Sometimes you see on Kali Shadow too. I know Wolf used that. But besides that, you don't really see Fergraph on other builds. It's mostly kind of supporting restricted. The main downside of Fergraph is it's often quite passive, especially if you're running the standard foul play second noise set. It doesn't do damage. You can run what Wolf did. Wolf had like a Fruit Spray Hyper Voice set, but that's very specific to like mostly Wolf builds. Besides that, Fergraph can often just stay on the field and do no damage. If your restricted goes down, sometimes Fergraph can't just do much versus like let's say versus you're putting Incineroar or like Rillaboom, it lacks the damage. But yeah, overall still very strong Mon, and you can throw it at almost any team. Landorus made finals at Worlds. It also dominated Worlds, I think. There were a lot in Top Cut in day 2, and I think it was the meta call at the time, just because Lando I matches well versus almost all of Miraidon's teammates. It's good versus Iron Hands, good versus Miraidon itself. It's good versus Heart Flame and Winds because you Sludge Bomb. So very strong Pokemon. It also just beats Incin, and it has a faster speed tier than Urshifu. So yeah, great speed tier, very strong attacker that hits most of the format. And it's good versus Miraidon. That's like amazing. It has basically all the perks as a strong Mon. And we saw this on mostly Kali Ice builds like Yuta had. I also ran it myself. We ran a Scarf set together. We had the same idea as Yuta actually. So you most commonly see either Scarf or Life Orb. Life Orb Sheer Force is really strong with Terra Poison. If you're running Scarf, you run Terra Ghost to avoid Fake Out. It really depends on your teammates. Like the one that top 8 Worlds of Life Orb had Regieleki and speed control for it, so that kind of makes up for your Scarf. So EUEBs plus strong Earth power is really good. The main downside of Lando I is it's good versus the mid-speed tier Pokemon, but when you start facing faster Pokemon, it gets tricky. Like stuff like you're good versus Miraidon, but you still gotta be faster than it. That's why you usually pair it with either Scarf or EUEBs. If Miraidon can outpace you in Tailwind, all of a sudden you can't move and you're in a bad position. It's also kind of frail. It doesn't take many double ups or single target hits anyways, so you gotta play really careful with that. So it needs a lot of support. But you can throw it on a lot of comps, like I said. It's mostly on Kali Ice. It also top cut was on Mazenna, and I think it can also work in Kali Shadow builds because it beats Incineroar pretty well. So yeah, very strong Mon. Also has Sandsear, so you can run a Kyogre. So you can fit in almost any comp. Very good Mon. My last Mon I'm gonna put here is Chien-Pao. Chien-Pao is it's pretty strong. It won Worlds last year, and it's gotten some new good partners. Partners like Zamazenta and Zacian can abuse the Sword of Ruin really well with Body Press or Play Rough or Behemoth Blade. Chien-Pao also enables Urshifu really well. It's a pretty classic like Chien-Pao Ursh Tornadus core. People have done that before. Or you're boosting Urshifu or Entei on the Zamazenta teams as well. Just really good enabling just so many physical attackers up here, and Chien-Pao supports all of them. It also has a really good speed tier, being speed tying Miraidon if they're timid, and outspeeding like stuff like Urshifu. You outspeed stuff like Lando I. You outspeed everything really with it. The Ogre Pawns. So really good speed tier. It's just really frail. It's you need to run a Focus Sash item on it, and it doesn't really like stuff like Incineroar or Urshifu. Urshifu with Mystic Water can one-shot it. Incineroar you can't really touch it, especially if you're not running Sacred Sword. Oftentimes they carry Throat Chop on Zomba teams. So it's still really good, just can't really hit Incin. That's why you have Zamazenta to deal with it. It also has inconsistencies with like stuff like Icicle Crash. So you want to usually pair this guy with Rillaboom, so you don't want to run Spinner. So you run Crash, you can miss Crash. So that's not always fun. But still a very good Mon, just because of its speed tier and its Sword of Ruin ability. Next here I have Ogerpon Wellspring. This one I don't think is as good as the other two, just because it can't beat Rillaboom. Rillaboom hard walls you and can hit you hard with Wood Hammer and U-turn back. It is really good versus Rapid Strike, I'll give it that. But it doesn't exactly beat Rapid Strike completely because smart Rapid Strike players will click Close Combat or Scarp U-Turn against it. But it did top 8 Worlds on a Cali Ice team just because bulky Follow Me is still good. It's a really actually good answer to Kyogre. Kyogre cannot touch this guy. And yeah, it's good versus Instant as well. So the Follow Me is a great kit for it, and you can damage Instant. You just can't hit damage. You can't hit Grass types. You can't hit Dragon types, and that's really the main issue of it. It's also harder to fit on teams. Like I think Diego was really the only one to use it on Cali Ice. Besides that, Wellspring kind of just fell off. Just because, like I said before, like the other Ogre Pawns just do it better. Like it's still a strong pick. Like you can't go wrong using it. But I much would rather use a Heart Flame or Cornerstone. This is Pelipper. Pelipper made Finals at Worlds. It just has a good move kit, like Wide Guard, Helping Hand, whatever. Hurricane's usually the most common set. It also gets other moves like Tailwind. And that's really it. The most common item on it is usually Focus Sash. The one that made Finals was Life Orb. You can also run cool sets like Safety Goggles or Covert Cloak, depending on your team. The main issue with Pelipper is its speed stat is really low. That's why it was paired with Cali Ice. Outside of that, it's really prone to double ups. Like stuff like Miraidon, you don't like. Everything's really just faster than you, so you need that Trick Room, or you need Tailwind for it to outpace things. If you don't have it, Pelipper is prone to double ups. It's also hard to fit on teams. It's really only used for Cali Ice and Zamazenta. Besides that, you don't see it played on any other team. But like, if you do have it, it's really good as kind of clicking Wide Guard. But there are other Pokemon that click Wide Guard as well. The main difference is having that weather ability is really good at supporting, let's say, your Urshifu or countering other weather like Sun. So not a bad Pokemon at all. Just you have to play it really particular and support it really well. Grimmsnarl. Grimmsnarl is consistently good in restricted formats. Being able to set up Reflecting Light Screen to help all your partners stay alive is really good. The Dark typing is also really nice. In a Calyrex format, you have Stab, Foul Play to hit both. Being able to resist Astro is really good as well. Reflect for Cali Ice is also really good. You also get stuff like Thunder Wave, really good speed control option. Like we mentioned how White Fire Rain's so good. You click Thunder Wave and Icy Wind. Grimmsnarl has Prankster Thunder Wave, so you can Thunder Wave almost every Pokemon besides ground types and dark types. Spirit Break's also a good option versus stuff like Raging Bolt and Iron Hands. Just having that Fairy type is also really strong. The main downside of Grimm is it can often be passive. It is mostly a support Pokemon clicking Thunder Wave. What makes the difference between Flare Marine is Flare Marine has strong, fast Moonblasts, while Grimmsnarl has slow Spirit Breaks. Grimmsnarl matches up better if you can position it in front of, like, let's say, Cali Ice or Cali Shadow, and just click the Foul Plays in front of it. But they're usually pairing it with like Follow Me and such. So oftentimes you're not really getting much damage off. You're mostly clicking Thunder Wave or your screens. Grimmsnarl is usually paired on, let's say, Zamazenta builds, Tropicos builds, and sometimes Kyogre builds as well. The top 8 and I see with that. But it's not on many top teams right now, but I wouldn't be surprised if it picks up more usage in the future. But sometimes it's hard to fit on more standard cops in the current format. Tornadus, like I said, Tornursh, that was one of the best combos before. The main downside of that is stuff like Raging Bolt and Miraidon give it a lot of issues, but it is a really good Tailwind mon. Like, it's similar to Whimsicott. Whimsicott has more tools with Light Screen. The main difference is Torn has Rain Dance, so you can support your Urshifu more. It's just weaker versus Miraidon, and Miraidon's so common right now, I don't think it's worth running that. Some comps prefer Torn over Whims, which is fair, but I think Whims' utility with Light Screen and Encore makes it better than Torn and more flexible. Torn is just better at enabling Urshifu, and clicking Bleak Windstorm is also pretty good as well with Rain Dance. That's the synergy you have. Indeedee. Indeedee is good because Terrain, Miraidon, and Rillaboom are some of the most popular Pokemon in the format, so being able to override the Terrain is really good. It's nice to give Calyrex Shadow fast expanding force, and boosting that is really good. And you also have, again, Follow Me, one of the best support pieces in the game. If you have Follow Me, you're a pretty good mon. And you also have Trick Room and Helping Hand, so really good support options. Similarly, as some of these other Pokemon, it's a pure support Pokemon. It doesn't do much damage, and oftentimes good players will isolate Indeedee and just have it stay in the field while they target the partner. So Indeedee can often be dead weight if opponent has a Rillaboom and plays around it. So you gotta play really careful with Indeedee, or play pretty aggressive. in a way. Like hard Trick Room teams would often like lead in DD or hard swap it so they can reposition it later. So it's not just doing anything in the field after you set Trick Room. So you gotta play really smart, and it's usually on Trick Room teams or you see on hyper offense teams too on Caloric Shadow. Regieleki, at top 8 worlds, I think it's a really strong Pokemon. It's just hard to fit on a lot of teams. It's most paired with Cali Ice because the Bolt Beam coverage is really good. Like Electroweb plus Glacial Lance is really strong. It's just very frail, so you're kind of forced to run the Focus Sash item. And even with Focus Sash, you still get KO'd by stuff like Rapid Strike. Certain strikes will still kill you. The plus side is that you beat Rapid Strike if it's Choice Scarf because Aleki's so fast, you outspeed Scarf Ursh still. And versus Sash Ursh, you can still like Volt Switch around it and play careful around it. It's just very frail if you get composition. Let's say Fake Out plus Surging can get you. Aleki, yeah, it splits all the restricteds as well. So not just Scarf Ursh, you outspeed like all the top tier restricteds like Shadow Rider and such, and Zacian and Zamazenta, all of them, which is really good. It's just not flexible. Like it's really only built on Cali Ice. Like you can run it on Cali Shadow teams, I guess, but Cali Shadow is usually better on those balance cores or better on just more standard Tailwind comps with like Indeedee, Torn, and that's all the speed control you really need. Aleki is really just on Cali Ice, but it's really good at the job from Cali Ice, to be fair. Iron Valiant made finals at Worlds. This one is kind of weird because it is solid, and I would say it is flexible with its move kit. The only reason why I'm saying it's not as flexible as the ones above because it was only used on one team. Iron Valiant has had no other success on any other teams besides on Cali Ice. It made finals at Japan Nats, and it made finals at Worlds, but it's all in a very similar Cali Ice build. So its move kit with Encore coaching and Encore is really strong, but the only partner you can really pair it with is Caloric's Ice Rider because it abuses those so well. Like being the White Guard or White Ash Barrage and coaching your Ice Rider is really good, but I don't know how you fit on many other comps. Like I think you can fit on maybe Shadow Rider comps, but again, Shadow Rider tools are, I think they have better tools than just Valiant, just because Valiant's kind of frail, and it's also prone to Fake Out. Like you can Terra Ghost it, but if you're bringing your Shadow Rider, normally you want Terra to Shadow Rider instead of your Valiant. So I think it's mostly going to be stuck on these Ice Rider comps, and Ice Rider comps are also not like doing too hot right now. So I don't think it can go any more above that, but it's still really strong. Like you can't go wrong with a Pokemon that has like every move in the game, like Encore, Coaching, Wide Guard. It also gets stuff like Icy Wind and Thunder Wave. So gets every move in the game, very strong, and it's one of the best Ice Rider partners. Entei is pretty similar to Valiant. It's a very strong Pokemon, but it's only hard stuck on one comp. In Entei's case, it's Zamazenta Chien-Pao. It makes a lot of sense, right? Because Chien-Pao can boost the Entei damage, and that's really it. Entei doesn't really fit in our team for that reason. Terra Normal E-Speed Choice Band is very strong with Sword of Ruin. You're good versus Shadow Rider comps because you can't get in by Instant. With Terra Normal, you are immune to Ash Barrage, which is very good. The downside of Entei is that it's kind of bad versus Urshifu. Well played Ursh can be annoying for it, and it's not really good versus rain comps and such. But when you pair it with Chien-Pao and you have E-Speed and you position it correctly, you can pick up many 1-hit KOs. So it's pretty particular on these Chien-Pao comps with Sama, but it did top 4 worlds, and it had some other results with Michael Kelsch. This is Torkoal. Torkoal, top 8 worlds, and it's only really used on these hard Trick Room comps, like Diego's Ice Rider team. You can also use it as, well, no, that's really it. I was going to say you can also use it on like other Ice Rider comps with faster modes. So sometimes like you can use like Protosynthesis like Flutter Mane and stuff, which I think also did Day 2 worlds, but I think Torkoal usually just works best on hard Trick Room comps. And that's really it. That's the main downside of it. It's just too slow. Like if you don't get Trick Room up, it can't move, and it's usually dying to every double up. It's really cool though because it's good versus Pelipper. Like being able to overwrite the weather is really good, and like Eruption boosted in Sun is really strong. You can one shot stuff like Rillaboom. It's really good at neutering damage from like Rapid Strike because you've Sun up. So it is really good kind of support in Cali Ice in particular. But that's really it. It's only used on Cali Ice comps, hard Trick Room comps, and you need Trick Room before it to get going. And if you don't, it can just be a sitting duck, similar to kind of Indeedee is. Tyranitar, similar to Torkoal, weather is strong. If you have a way to control weather in a game, you can play around opposing weather, which is really good. So playing around Pelipper, playing around Torkoal, playing around Koraidon, Tyranitar helps you with that. The Dark typing is really good versus both Calyrex forms. You have Knockoff to kill Shadow Rider, Knockoff Clear, but off Kylie Ice. It's usually paired on comps with Zamazenta. It top 16 worlds on a Zamazenta, T-Tar. I think they had Latios too. They had like a bunch of weird Pokemon, but T-Tar has had some results besides that too. It did well at NIC from Michael Zhang. And yeah, it's just a good Zama partner. The main issue of it, it's kind of slow, so you really need a lot of speed control with it. Like, it's usually paired with Booster Flutter Mane, just because it's weak to Urshifu and it's too slow. If you don't have these tools, though, it's so bad versus Ursh. Like, Ursh will just KO of any close combat, any Surgeon Strikes. Even if you are Focus Sash, right? Like, Sword of Ruin Surgeon Strikes probably KOs you. Terra Water Surgeon will KO you. And you can't do much back to Ursh. But versus the Calyrex is pretty cool, and having Water Control, like I said, means you're not a bad Pokemon. So T-Tar will be right here. Next is Smeargle. Smeargle is one of the most evil Pokemon in the game. It hasn't seen much usage recently, but it's had a lot of good results with Ice Rider and Shadow Rider, just because its kit is so strong with Spore, Wyguard, Decorate, Follow Me, or Fake Out. You can support either restrictor you want. Like, Wyguard helps Shadow Rider beat the Mirror. You have Spore to Spore the partners like Raging Bolt or Ursh or Ensign. Wyguard's also good for Ice Rider, blocking Astral Barrage as well. You can run Decorate on that guy, so you can Decorate in Trick Room, and you have +2 Glacial immediately, which is really good. So yeah, it gets like every move in the game. It does get every move in the game. So it can do anything it wants and support every restricted it wants. The only downside of Smeargle is that it dies to certain strikes unless you EV for it, which you need a lot of investment, or you need to commit Terra Grass to live. And it can't really be on any other comp. It's really just both Calyrexes, which is fine. But yeah, like I said, like, you need a lot going for it, and you also need to get a lot of 50-50s right with Smeargle. Because like, when you have Fake Out, Spore, and Wyguard, you need to click at the right time because your opponent can also play around it. So I think Smeargle requires a required skill set to use, and you need to get some 50-50s right to use them well. Next is Ursaluna. Ursaluna is usually just a Trick Room Pokemon, like the Indeedee and Torkoal here. But the cool thing about Ursaluna is it's really good versus Miraidon because of the ground typing, and it's really good versus Calyrex Shadow Rider. So it's often used as a kind of a anti-meta pick against them. The issue of it is that it needs Trick Room to thrive, and it's weak to stuff like Min Speed Iron Hands, which is trending. Like, Iron Hands can like low kick it in Trick Room, so you're forced to Terra Ghost, which is fine, but that is a little bit annoying if you don't have Terra available. And it's really prone to instant reload cycling, just because Fake Out plus Intim, and it's also weak to Urshifu. So you really needed to have the speed control in your favor, either Trick Room or even Tailwind. Sometimes Tailwind Bear is a thing, but it's not nearly as common. Ursaluna Blood Moon, same reasons as Ursaluna Singular. The main difference is the Terra type. Usually they just run Terra Normal just for damage, like Terra Normal Life Orb is a common set. It's good again versus both Calyrex and Miraidon, but it's worse versus Urshifu even more because you can't Terra Ghost, and it's even worse versus Iron Hands because if you try to use it in Trick Room, they can low kick you. So it has similar issues, but it has similar perks, in particular versus Cali Shadow Miraidon. Next is Ditto. Ditto is pretty cool. It's had a few top cuts now, usually with Ice Rider or Miraidon. We also see it recently on Zamazenta and Koraidon comps. This is because you can copy other restricteds, which give like their partner restricted issues. Like on Koraidon comps, for example, Cali Ice and Miraidon often give it issues. So if you can copy those and KO them back, or reverse Trick Room back, or copy their attack boost from Calyrex, right, that can give you a swing in your favor. The downside to Ditto is that it's inconsistent because you're not always copying the right slot, especially if you're leading it. Sometimes you lead Ditto, try to snipe the restricted turn 1, and if you don't catch it, you're in a bad spot because it's truly just a 50-50. To use Ditto correctly, you need to get some 50-50s correct, kind of like Smeargle. So that's why I kind of have him in the same tier here. And you can't really fit this guy on every team. He's really just a matchup patch if you're really weak to a certain restricted. Then Ditto you can probably throw on. This is Annihilate. Annihilate is usually used on Cali Ice builds as a coaching bot, and you also Final Gambit to get rid of threats you don't like. Similar to Urshifu, like Urshifu has the Scarf coaching on Cali Ice teams sometimes. Why people use Annihilate is, again, like for Final Gambit, the Ghost typing to be in a Fake Out. You also pressure Calyrex Shadow more because you also have Shadow Claw. The downside to that is that it's kind of linear to one comp. Usually in these hard Trick Room comps, you have that final gambit coaching you turn to reposition out, get your Trick 'em up, or just coaching spam plus Glacial. But it's kind of predictable, even though the move kit is flexible enough where like you have to keep your opponent guessing. But good players, or they have Terra Ghost, they can play around the Ape. I think that Ape is going to be a lot better in stuff like the Global Challenge, but it has had some success in Best of 3 with Alex Underhill at NIC, but it hasn't seen a whole lot of Best of 3 usage since then. Moltres Galar, it won a regional, and it's similar to how like T-Tar is. It's a dark type on a Zamazenta team, and that's really it. The cooler part of Moltres, it's better Wide Guard abuser. Being a flying type means you're immune to high horsepower, and with Wide Guard, you are immune to Glacial Lance. So it's really good counter to Kali Ice with Zamazenta. And the dark typing means it's really good versus both Calyxes again. You have the Stab Foul play, Fiery Wrath for spread, and they often carry Taunt or Air Slash. Taunt's really good at shutting down Amoonguss and Trick Room, and Air Slash can hit Urshifu. Hasn't seen a whole lot of usage recently, but I think it's a pretty strong mon on these Zamazenta teams just because it helps them deal with the weaknesses, and Wide Guard helps support the Moltres do its job. Next is Volcarona. Volcarona is a strong fire type. There's a lot of strong fire types in the format, so it's a little bit in the lower end compared to the rest. Just because the bug typing is kind of bad versus like rock. Like this mon hard loses to Ogremon Cornerstone, but it has had some results on stuff like Kyogre and Miraidon, just because it helps it deal with Rillaboom. And the support kit's really nice, like will support Rage Powder or Will-O-Wisp. And you also have like Stab Overheat, and you also have Stab Struggle Bug as support as well. So it has a pretty good kit to support teammates. It's just kind of weak and frail versus some of the stronger threats like Urshifu and Cornerstone. Well, mainly Cornerstone. Urshifu is like fine because you Flame Body, but you are really begging off Flame Body. The amount of times I've used Volcarona and I'm hoping I get Flame Body burn on Urshifu, I don't get it, and I lose the game off that. So that's really sad. But it's pretty cool versus some Pokemon, in particular Zamazenta. Like this guy hard beats Zamazenta, so that's kind of cool. Next is Roaring Moon. Roaring Moon is kind of weird, but it got some usage of Worlds. It top cut Worlds on a Kyogre team. It also saw play on a Kali Shadow team. So it's really good versus opposing Kali Shadow to help in the mirror. And it's cool on these Kyogre comps because you help it beat grass types better, and you give the Kyogre speed control and ways to beat Kali Shadow, of course. The downside of Moon is it's bad versus Incin. It's bad versus Incin Ursh because they can fake out close combat you. You can go for the Terra Flying, but at that point they have Intim and Ursh on the field to beat you. So that's not great. It's also bad versus Kali Ice. So it's a very particular Pokemon where it's not really doing great versus some of the non-restricteds, but it's doing pretty good versus mainly Kali Shadow and of course the grass types that give issues for like Kyogre. The fast Tailwind's pretty cool too, just because Tailwind is kind of not as common in the format. You really just have Whimsicott, so having a secondary option of Tailwind if you don't want Prankster is pretty cool. Jugulis, same reasons as Moon. Flying Dark is basically what they have, right? Moon has a Terra Flying, but the Jugulis is already Flying Dark. I used Jugulis myself at NIC and Indianapolis, and I had some pretty good results with it using Kyogre. Just being able to have fast Tailwind to enable Kyogre is really cool. Being able to deal with the grass types, good Kali Shadow check, and having access to Snarl instead of Knockoff, which is also pretty good. Snarl is a bit different at neutering damage, Knockoff's more for damage, but Snarl, it's still consistent damage versus mostly Kali Shadow if you land. It's really good at stopping it from dealing damage back to you as well. Manshao, it's another niche Wide Guard mon. This one's cool because it has Fake Out plus Inner Focus, so you can't be intimidated or faked out by other Pokemon, and with close combat, and you can't get intimidated. You're really good with Incineroar, so you can close combat opposing Incins and pair it with something like Kali Shadow, and Kali Shadow means you pin the Terra Ghost that Incins might have, which is really good as well. Main issue of Manshao is that it's weak to Urshifu, like Surge Strikes will KO you for Focus Sash, and it's only used on these Kali Shadow comps. Kali Shadow comps can either run like the standard Incineroar, or they run stuff like Smeargle or Manshao. So pretty similar roles, but I don't think it's as flexible as having your own Intim plus terrain control. Like Fake Out Wide Guard is good utility, but I think these guys do it a little bit better. But overall, still a strong mon. It also won a regional. Next is Teal Mask. Teal Mask Tough Cut Worlds. This is we used it on our Worlds team that me and Shailing had. And the reason why we had it was because you have Defiant for Incineroars, and we ran Bullet Seed Loaded Ice to beat Urshifu. Urshifu, like we mentioned before, has been running the Focus Sash item, so Bullet Seed being able to kill it through Focus Sash is really nice. And you can Terror it to get the speed boost, so you can kill Scarf Ursh. And it was really good at pinning some faster restricteds like Miraidon and Kelly Shadow. So you can like Terra, Bullet Seed, pin it with your Scarf Landorus, with your 2 fast attackers, and get multiple KOs, which is really nice. The main downside to Teal Mask is that you only have Grass Stab really to deal damage versus a lot, because we ran Follow Me, Bullet Seed, Encore, which was fine, but oftentimes you can't hit Incineroar with it, so Encore was often used to try to lock Incin to a certain move. It does get other options, like Superpower is one option, but I think that the best set on it is Follow Me, Bullet Seed, Encore, just for a disruption. Another downside to it is that the pure Grass typing can only get you so far. The other ones, at least, are not way too. Glacial Lance, you can't really bring this guy versus Kelly Ice unless you support it really, really well and position it really well. If you get it caught in Glacial, you just lose it, which is really bad. Other downsides to it is that it's not really easy to use. I think it was very particular on our Ice Rider comp, but it hasn't seen much play on any other comp. So if you really need a Urshifu check, I would recommend trying Teal Mask, but if you want more consistent ways, usually Amoonguss or Rillaboom or any other grass type fits this niche a little bit better. Latios, same reason for Moltres Galar. Levitate and resisting Glacial with the Y-Guard and being immune to high horsepower is really good. Main difference about it is you are mostly good versus Kelly Ice with that Terra and Y-Guard. You're not good versus Kelly Shadow, but you're good versus some of the non-restricteds. Its speed tier is really good, actually. You're faster than Ursh, and you're also faster than Ogerpon. So it's a really good fast Pokemon. And it did Top Cut Worlds as well, a top 16 Worlds with a Zamazenta team. But again, it's only on these Zamazenta teams, and if it's a very specific niche, it's also very frail. So Latios is prone to like Sucker Punch and like Miraidon. So it's a bit weak to that. We are almost on this list, but next up is Dondozo. Dondozo, I should put Gary up here too. Dondozo Gary, top 8 and top 16 worlds on a Miraidon comp and a Shadow Rider comp. These is really the only comps you'll see it on, just because Dondozo helps them beat their respective weaknesses. Like, Dondozo is really good for beating Zamazenta because you ignore the defense. It's also really good versus Kelly Ice because you resist both its moves. And really fat Pokemon at being certain restricteds. And when you pair it with stuff like Poison, or it's mostly Poison, like kind of how Gamora Star is, you can just wall up teams and just beat them on its own. It's a really impressive Mon. It's kind of a joke in the community at the moment that how toxic Dondozo is. And yeah, it's back in the metagame just because it beats Zamazenta and Ice Rider, and it's just really hard to kill. The downside of Dondozo is that it's kind of bad versus Incineroar Ursh, which is almost every team. So if you just cycle it, Incineroar Ursh better than the Dondozo player, and you prevent the poison, you can easily beat Dondozo. It also doesn't really like to face Clear Smog Amoonguss. I think Clear Smog Amoonguss is an auto-loss matchup to it. Justin Knox, who top 16 worlds, lost to Utah, who had Clear Smog Amoonguss, which is a pretty tough matchup, so any Clear Smog Amoonguss will give you issues. Stuff like Miraidon can also outdamage you because Draco Meteor and you're unaware. Draco 2 shots on Dozo, which is not great. So some Pokemon can outdamage you if you're not careful. So you need to support really well with Poison and your partners. Next up is Clefairy. Clefairy has won a few events, and it's just really good at doing its job. Again, another Follow Me Mon. Like, all the Follow Me Mons are going to be basically in this tier. And it also gets the Friend Guard ability. So it's a bit different with the Follow Me Mons. Like, with Friend Guard, you can help your restricted take hits better, kind of like Reflected Light Screen. And it's more passive in a sense because they often just run Follow Me Helping Hand after you, or Life Dew. So no attacking move, just pure support. So the main issue of Clefairy is similar to how like Grimmsnarl and DD is. Like, you don't really get to deal damage the way you want to. You're mostly just there to support your restricted with damage reduction, or just Follow Me. It's a really good partner for mostly Kelly Shadow, just because you Follow Me away the Dark types, and you help the Kelly Shadow just take hits all around. Next up is Scrimtail. Screamtail is very disruptive. Similar to how Whimsicott is, you have fast Encore. It's not Prankster, but with booster speed. You can Encore stuff before your opponent can move. You also have Encore Disable, so you can like Encore something, fake out and disable it, and then they're forced to struggle. You can also disable fast Scarf Pokemon, like we mentioned before, Scarf Ursh or Scarf Lando. Being able to shut down that is really good. Screamtail is often seen on comps like Tropicos. It's often seen on comps like Cali Shadow. Both did well at Worlds and other events. Only issue with Screamtail is it's also very passive. You don't really do much damage, and it also has a decent amount of counterplay. You need to be something like Terra Grassica around Amoonguss to go for Encore Disable, but they're usually Terra Dark nowadays, so you can't really have to do that. Pokemon like Ogerpon can also follow me away disables or Encores, so you can set up a lot easier, because oftentimes Screamtails use to disrupt setup with Encore and Disable, so you can Encore Tropicos or Encore a Cali Shadow into Nasty Plot. But if they're supporting it with Follow Me, they can kind of stop you and then KO you with Astral Barrage or something, or get the free setup and then get a guaranteed attack to get damage off. Next is Dragonite. Dragonite was able to top 8 Worlds, and I think it's really cool actually. Like, it was only used on that Miraidon Dozo team for good success. Like, the main perk of Dragonite is it's good versus Incin, Rilla, Ursh, and you can either run Multiscale or Inner Focus. Multiscale was the choice for the top 8 team, just to take hits better for like taking like the restricted hits like Deagleam or Draco if you have Terra available. And Terra Normal is really good versus Shadow Rider comps. Again, you resist that Fire Water Grass Core. I think you can also run this guy with Chenpao Zama, just because Dragonite is able to abuse Sword Up Ruin well, and again, it's good versus Shadow Rider because you have Terra Normal. It's also a good Zama partner because you have Wyguard to support it. So I think it's a pretty cool Pokemon, just kind of hard to fit on other comps. I feel like it's mostly going to be better with ways to have damage boost with Chenpao and Zama, or in Miraidon comp, just because it deals with the Fire Water Grass Core. Like, mostly dealing well with Rillaboom is pretty good, which Dondozo and Miraidon don't like. So yeah. Besides that, Dragonite hasn't seen much other success, but I don't think it's worse than any of the other Pokemon down here, so that's why I'm having it up here. Alright, so moving on with next tier. I'm just going to go over both these pretty briefly. So Iron Bundle and Treads, they're better options, but they can still day 2. This is the case for them because Miraidon already has so many good partners. You already have Hands, you already have Heart Flame. It means you have to drop one of them for these Pokemon. Bundle has had a day 2 before, a 9 for the LA, but the set was like Icy Wind for Encore, and they didn't have Whimsicott. Like, Whimsicott kind of does that job better with Tailwind, Speed Control, and Light Screen to support your teammate as well, and then you also have Encore on it. So I think Whimsicott does the job better than Iron Bundle. And Treads is mostly here as a Quick Drive abuser. Like, Hands, I think, does that job pretty well. The main perk of Treads is that it's better versus Miraidon itself. Like, you wall, drift, you resist Deagling, you resist Draco, and you KO back with a High Horsepower or Steel Roller of the Terra Fairy, which is really good. But I think it's like very particular. Like, it's really just for Miraidon, and people can handle Treads by using something like Heart Flame to either follow me or Agricultural KO it. So not nearly as good as Miraidon's partners, but it's still on Miraidon team, and Miraidon's like busted, so I'm gonna have them here. Okidogi. Okidogi has really only one result. It was like 8 free worlds, piloted by Brian Collins, and it was on like a Lunala side spam team with Tricker mode, which is kind of cool because Okidogi has like it's not like Defiant. I forgot what the ability's called. It's Guard Dog, right? So Guard Dog means you get attack boost, but it's only from Intimidate. Like, it doesn't proc, I believe, from like Parting Shot and such. Drain Punch is really cool at hitting Incineroar, Gong Shot to hit stuff like Rillaboom, especially when you're running like a DD team, which Brian had. The downside of Okidogi is that it's not very consistent. It's not exactly the fastest, and it really wishes it has Fake Out. Like, it gets Upper Hand instead. Like, if this guy had Fake Out, I think it'd be better. But you're kind of stuck with just Drain Punch, Gong Shot, Upper Hand, and like Knockoff. So that's not really great. It's also not really good versus Shadow Rider that carries Psychic, so you're forced to like Terror it. And if you Terror on your Okidogi, you're not gonna have Terror on something like Lunala. So it's a very specific mon on one specific comp, and it did actually have the day 2, so it actually fits its tier perfectly, because it hasn't had any usage on another team. But yeah, really good versus Incineroar in particular, assuming you land your Gong Shots. Wo-Chen has had seen some usage, right? It top 8 NIC. I day 2 NIC with it as well. It also day 2 Worlds. But that's really it for how it goes. Like, Wo-Chen hasn't seen much success since NIC. Like, the one that day 2 Worlds, I believe didn't make it as far as it did in NIC. And yeah, like, the main issue with Wo-Chen is that it's too passive. Like, you don't deal any damage besides Ruination. And it's often hard to like outstall your opponents when the metagame is kind of fast. Like when Mariah teams are going Terra Fairy now, which they weren't before, like Terra Fairy dealing messes up Wo-Chen's game plans pretty hard. Like Wo-Chen is a really good partner for Kyogre and Kyogre only, just because you're able to have the fast Pollen Puffs to support your Kyogre so you get the Water Spouts again, and you support Kyogre's lower defense stat. But besides on Kyogre comps, hasn't seen much usage otherwise, just because it's too slow versus like faster teams like Miraidon. And yeah, it isn't like stuff like Urshifu and Heartflame. Heartflame is the biggest problem for it, actually. Like, Heartflame kind of beats Wo-Chen Kyogre on its own, so you got to be really careful. Tinglu, kind of similar to Wo-Chen. I don't think it has actually many good results compared to it, but it's still just too passive. Doesn't do damage. It's too slow. Like, the best thing about it is that it's a hard check to Shadow Rider itself. I believe it did day 2 Worlds, but it's really bad versus Urshifu. Like, Urshifu can go for your Protect, you can't hit it back, and you don't like stuff like Ice Rider or Zamazenta. So yeah, a similar Dark type, negates damage, good versus some of the Calyxes, but doesn't deal damage back. Porygon, this one's kind of funny. Porygon hasn't seen much usage in Regulation G. Like, it's really good versus Shadow Rider in particular, but that's really it. It hasn't had many cuts, or cuts at all, only in the Seniors Division. Robbie, top 8 Worlds in the Senior Division of P2, but it was just him using this team. It was like a P2 Ursaluna team with like Koraidon, very particular team. Porygon just gets outpaced by stuff like Urshifu, and it gets outdamaged by a lot in the format. It's really just only good versus Kelly Shadow, and I guess Miraidon, because the P2 he had was Terra Ground. But I think it's just a little bit too niche of a Pokemon. Like, if you want other Trick Room setters, there are better ones. So I wouldn't recommend going Porygon just because it's also kind of slow and passive. But, you know, in previous formats, it has been good, just currently maybe not great at the moment. Next, Electabuzz. Electabuzz has only seen usage at NIC. Like, it was a lot better there and better in Reg H, because Vital Spirit had more uses. Mungus hasn't really been the most common mons for Vital Spirit to really pop off in. And there are better Follow Me mons with the Ogrepon, Heartflame, and Cornerstone because they're more aggressive. Electabuzz's main issue is it doesn't do damage back. It's bulkier than Eviolite, but that's really it. And it's only used on this one particular combo of Cali Ice Rider and Trick Room. It's like hard Trick Room Cali Ice to support it, to get it going, and then you have like Ursaluna Blood Moon. But besides that, doesn't do anything else. It's really bad versus stuff like Zamazenta. Stuff like Shadow Rider can also ignore it for Follow Me, right? Ignore your Follow Me. And you can't do anything to the Shadow Rider itself, which is also kind of bad. Weezing. Weezing is weird. Like, it's only used on these Dondozo comps. The only reason why I'm not pairing a Dondozo is because it's only used on Dondozo Shadow Rider comps. There's other Dondozo builds where you don't need Weezing, and it's only had success on that one Dondozo team, where Weezing cannot fit on any other comps from what I've seen. People have tried it before, just because Nutrient and Gas should be a really good ability, but it's just way hard to execute in practice. So for that reason, I'm just putting it down here, just because it's only used on this one Dondozo team, and I don't think it's actually nearly as good as some of these other picks where it's actually worth being a tier higher. Thunderous. Thunderous has had one top 8 at the Bowling Special a while back, and that was really it. It's a Prankster Mon, so it can't be terribly low, but the issue with it's outclassed by all the other Prankster Mons, like ones I caught before you mentioned, like you have Light Screen, and Encore. Thunderous has Thunder Wave and Eerie Impulse, which is okay. You also have like Prankster Rain Dance and Taunt. But again, like I think Grimstar was caught to do the job better. And Thunderous is just too weak to stuff like Cali Ice, and it's just frailer in general. Goldango. Goldango, this one's sad. I love Goldango. I wish he was better in restricted format, but unfortunately he's just too slow, and he gets overwhelmed by stuff like Urshifu and Calyrex. Goldango often runs stuff like Terra Normal in this format, so you can be immune to Astro Barrage, but then you get pinned by Urshifu. and you're slow in Urshifu, which is not great either. The main perk of Goldango is really just walling out Zamazenta. You hardball Zama, which is really good, and that's really it. It's also a really good Goldango check and Kali Ice check. Mungus, you're immune to Mungus and you wall out Kali Ice. But that's really it. And I feel like versus Kali Ice, like it's not even free because they can higher horsepower you in Trick Room, and they also have Terra to resist Make It Rain. So you gotta play pretty particular, and you need to support it really well. I just think it gets overwhelmed in this format. It's just a little bit too slow. Crown, honestly, Crown, same reasons I have it for Treads and Bundle. I'm not gonna really go over it a whole lot. It has some cool kits with like Attacking Cutter and Psychic Noise, like Psychic Noise for hands, Attacking Cutter can kill Chen Pao. You also wall Miraidon pretty well because you can run Terra Ground Blast to hit it, and you can force a 50-50s, but I feel like Miraidon comps can just beat it with like Heart Flame in there. Yeah, like Heart Flame and Whimsicott would beat this pretty well in my opinion. So I don't think Crown is really just the Miraidon answer you really need, and on Miraidon comps, like I said, you'd rather use like the hands, Whims, Heart Flame, Core. Chandelure. Chandelure has seen some play on Zamazenta teams, but it hasn't like seen much usage after that. Like the only reason why I'm putting like lower than like Moltres and like Rory Moon Jugulis is because like those ones I think have more utility options and more damage, while Chandelure it's very slow. It's weak to Urshifu, which is the main thing I don't like. Like being able to just Data Surge and force a Terra, it's not great. And it really relies on mostly Zamazenta to support it. Like I don't think it's a good Pokemon on its own. The only perk it has on its own is beating Koraidon, but these Koraidon teams have been going on recently, having carried Chiyu, and the same like Zamazenta, right? You also beat Zamazenta on its own, but you don't beat Zamazenta's partners like Chen Pao plus Urshifu will pin you as well. So I think it's like as a pseudo check to some Pokemon in theory, but it doesn't work at that well in practice. So I have it down here. Klefki, similar reason to Thundurus. It's just a worse Prankstermon than everything else. The only perk of it is that resisting Glacial Lance is nice, but you're still weak to high horsepower and you don't have any damage. Drago. Drago is weird. It's had some success in this format. Like it did cut Worlds and has like one top 8, but it's very particular on hyper offensive teams. And from what I've seen and heard, Drago is very bad versus Miraidon comps. Grant Weldon made like a team report and he said that the Miraidon team was one of his worst matchups. And when Miraidon winning Worlds and being one of the most common restricteds, I think that's really, really bad for Drago to be that like weak to that. So I'm putting it down here just because you're really to Miraidon, and its speed tier is really bad where you need Tailwind to support it, and Tailwind mirrors you're not doing too hot with it either. So having Drago right here. Basket Legion's only used on Kyogre comps. Basket Legion almost top cut Worlds at top 32, but it was only that one team, and it needs a lot of support to get going. Like, of course, you need Kyogre, you need Serena to block Sucker Punches and Thunderclaps. It's cool. The Ghost Type is cool because you do beat Zamazenta pretty well. You also can KO Kali Shadow and Kali Ice Rider with like Last Respects. So that's very strong. But in general, like it's not very consistent, only in Kyogre comps. And if you want a strong water type in general and you want to fit in most teams, most people are going to go Urshifu Rapid Strike anyways. Arch, similar reason. It's a Kyogre partner and only a Kyogre partner. The issue of Arch in this format on Kyogre teams is it's just so weak to Urshifu. Like Urshifu pins are annoying for it. Landorus Incarnate rise in usage is also annoying for it because even with Assault Vest, its Assault Vest is kind of like it doesn't raise its paper stats, right? It's very low. Like Earth Power can still KO you, so you're forced to Terra. Stuff like Miraidon can also give you issues because Draco Meteor can one-shot you. And you just don't really deal well with a lot of the faster Pokemon in the format. I think this is too slow. Kind of similar to Goldango, like one of the top Rec Age threats, but it's just too slow in its current format. Brute Bonnet, kind of similar to the Ring guys. Brute Bonnet's only really used on Sun teams, and it's not awful of a Pokemon because the Dark typing is nice for both Kali Shadow and Ice Rider. You like Sucker Punch and like Foul Play, it gets. You can also run like something like Spore. Spore Rage Powder is really good utility options. Like it's a little bit faster than Mungus, so you can outspeed some threats. And Rage Powder to support your restricted is always nice. But it's kind of frailer in a way where the Grass Dark typing is actually really bad defensively. So you get pinned by close combat. You're weak to a Rillaboom U-turn, weak to like Flare Blitz Incin, weak to Zamazenta. So it's a bit of a Terra hog. So having to Terra your support option every time you say you're restricted is kind of bad. And yeah, being Grass Dark is its main downfall. Like, its kit's pretty good, but the typing's like horrendous. Umbreon, another dark type. Umbreon's kind of cool because it's really good for Ice Rider comps with Safety Goggles and Terra Water. This is what Key and Campbell used to top 4 LA and to almost top cut Worlds with. But besides him, Umbreon hasn't seen much usage otherwise. It's only used on Zacian comps. And it's just too passive. Like, having only Foul Play as your attacking move and you're forced to run Yawn and Helping Hand only, and Taunt, means you're really weak to like redirection, so they can redirect their way to attack or support option, and then they can get attacked back by like Urshifu. They force Terra to Water. They can pin it with something like Raging Blood and Rillaboom. It's not very good versus Mirana comps or Zamazenta comps. So yeah, it's really only for Cali Ice going against it, and it's only used on one common team right now. So I'm gonna have it right here. Serena, same reasons as the Rain guys, only used on Kyogre comps. And the downside of Serena is that like Queen Majesty is just like Fergaraf, right? Blocking priority, but you have a worse typing in the format. Like, Grass typing to block priority is not nearly as good as the normal typing because you're not immune to Astral Barrage. The only reason why you use Serena is because Kyogre is weak to stuff like Raging Blood and Rillaboom, and Serena gets Triple Axle. So it's a more offensive way of blocking priority and killing stuff back, but you're a lot frailer, and you're only using more particular comps where Fergaraf's more flexible on other comps like Miraidon, Cali Shadow, and more. Mousehold, also very particular. It's only used on Cali Shadow comps with Dondozo. The very first iteration of Dondozo Shadow Rider had Mousehold on it. This was piloted by John Hu and Carson Confer on ladder. They were using that a bunch, and they had a Mousehold that was like Follow Me, Faint, like Taunt. Faint is kind of cool, so you can like break like Wide Guard, so Cali Shadow with Choice Specs can KO stuff with Astral Barrage. But besides that, you don't really see it. The issue with Mousehold is that it's just very frail. Like, stuff like Urshifu can KO you, and if you're running Faint and only Faint, like, it's your only attacking move, you can't do damage. So you're really just a support piece, which is okay. But there are other better Follow Me Mons. Like I mentioned before, like, Follow Me Mons cannot be bad. I don't think they can be any lower than this. But stuff like Heart Flame, Cornerstone just deal the job better. I kind of just want to click Follow Me. Mousehold is only just used to support your Cali Shadow Choice Specs, and the Choice Specs Cali Shadow set has fallen off a lot in usage because of how linear it is, and with stuff like Terra Normal popping off. Next is Dragapult. Dragapult, day 2, day regional. It's Balloon Special, and it didn't just day 2, it actually top 8. It was first seed, along with Comfey. I'm putting them both here actually because they were both only using this one team with Tropicos, and they disappeared. They haven't seen any usage since then. And if you want to use their kit, the Dragapult on that team was Thunder Wave, Sucker Punch, Dragon Darts, like Phantom Force. If you want to use a fast Thunder Wave Mon with Tropicos, there's one right here, Flutter Mane. You shouldn't be using Pult, you should be using Flutter Mane, in my opinion. There's also Comfey. Comfey is very passive. It's just clicking Floor, Healing, Taunt, and Trick Room. It are the only options really for support pieces. And I don't think Tropicos needs all that. Like, if you want a good Tropicos team, all you need is Insane, plus Follow Me, plus Double Fake Out. That's all you need. Your recoveries come from leftovers plus grassy terrain. That is more than enough than Floor Healing. Floor Healing can also just be negated by just taunting the Comfey or just redirecting it. Araquanid has had a few day 2s in some regionals, and that's really it. It's just another niche Wide Guard Mon that is in particular really strong versus Cali Ice and Cali Ice only, but it's not an easy Pokemon to fit on many comps, so I'm going to have it right here. Iron Boulder and Iron Leaves, same reason as Treads and Bundle. They're better Quirk Drive abusers, and they're not nearly as good as like the other ones. Like Hands is more supportive. If you have to run Iron Boulder, Iron Leaves, you gotta drop one of the good guys. Iron Boulder is better versus Ogerpon Heartflame in particular because Mighty Cleave can go for Protect and kill the Fire type, and that's really it. If you're locking yourself in Mighty Cleave, Iron Hands can wall you out. These guys often run Choice Band. I believe it almost top cut original. But besides that regional, it hasn't seen usage otherwise. Same as Leaves. Leaves got like rank 1 the cart ladder and hasn't seen usage otherwise. Just because it's really good with like versus Hands and Urshifu in general doesn't mean it beats Heartflame. You're kind of trading weaknesses when you're running one of these guys by trying to beat the common Miraidon team, right? So you don't get as many value from Boulder, Leaves, Bundle, or Treads than Hands, Ogerpon. Next is Venusaur, Jumpluff, and Lilligant. These are just Sleep Powder guys that are all used in Sun teams, and they have seen some play. Not really Lilligant, mostly Jumpluff and Venusaur. Venusaur top 8 worlds on the Karate team I mentioned with Robbie with a Porygon. And Jumpluff did really well on the online tour that I covered in my last video on a Groudon team. But besides that, these guys get almost no play, only on Sun. But when you have Sleep Powder and Sun, you can't really go wrong with that. The only downside is inconsistency. So you're not going to see these often, and only on Sun teams, of course. So I'm going to have them like right here. Next is Sableye. Sableye is, again, just a worse Prankstermon. It does get Reflecting Light Screen. The pros of it is you also have like stuff like Prankster Will-O-Wisp for the physical attackers, and you also have Quash, which is cool. So you have some slightly more options, but again, I think Whimsicott and Grimmsnarl do the job slightly better just because they have better typing and they have a better move kit. Gastrodon, again, it's pretty passive. It hasn't seen a whole lot of competitive play, but people always try to run Gastro because it's really good versus Kyogre, it's good versus Rapid Strike, but common partners with Rapid Strike are Rillaboom, and Rillaboom beats Gastrodon pretty hard. Yes, you can Terra, but you're not doing much back to the Rillaboom. And if you're tearing a Gastro, you can't Terra Restricted or any other partner, which is awful. And Gastrodon is only really clicking Yawn and Clear Smog or Earth Power. Like, Earth Power is not doing a whole lot of damage. Yawn and Clear Smog are mostly utility options. Yawn, you can't click versus Mirana comps, and Clear Smog's only really for, like, Dondozo. And if you want Dondozo check, I think that there are better options like Amoonguss. So I'm not really a huge fan of Gastro, never have been, just because of how passive it is. So I'm having it like right here. Walking Wake, very similar to the Sun guys and the Treads and Boulder and Leaves. It's just another abuser that's not as good for its restricted archetype. In Walking Wake's case, it's a Koraidon or Groudon partner. It's not nearly as good as Flutter Mane or like Raging Bolt. I think running Flutter Mane, Raging Bolt, Walking Wake, and Koraidon on the same team is very excessive. You shouldn't be running Triple Dragon. That's just way too much. Walking Wake's also just very frail, and I don't think it's just not fast and strong enough. Like, the attack is like about 100. You can't really pick up many KOs. Bolt's like way stronger. So if you want a strong Dragon type, it's not as fast, but it's bulkier. I'd run Bolt just because it has more utility options than Wake. Wake is supposed to just be a strong attacker, where I don't think it's as needed because you have Koraidon as that, and you also have Flutter Mane. So not as good as Bolt. Overqwil, same thing as the other Rain guys. It did top 8 NIC, and that was really it. My main perk about this guy is that he's supposed to be a Shadow Rider, but Henry still lost a Shadow Rider with this guy on a Kyogre team. Like, Dark and Poison is really good versus resisting Astro Barrage and Psychic, but he still lost to the one matchup he probably should have won, which I find like really weird. And like, why else would you use this mod anyways if it's supposed to be Shadow Rider? And Kyogre, you're already limiting your options enough anyways. There's so many options that you have for restricteds, but with Kyogre, you were forced to run like all of these quote-unquote bad Pokemon, like stuff like Serena, Kyogre, and other Pokemon that don't get much as usage, and you're forced to run Overqwil, and you're still not beating the matchups you needed to beat it in. I find it like really underwhelming. So I'm having it like right here. Alcremie is sort of a gimmick. I'm only having it here because its kit's like not awful. Like, Sweet Veil was kind of cool because you can't put to sleep like you and your partners, and it also gets Decorate. So what Alcremie is used for is usually Trick Room Abuser. So in Trick Room, you can spam Decorate for your Cali Ice Rider. It's a little bit linear how it plays though, because stuff like Follow Me shuts that down pretty well, and there's a lot of that right now in the format. So I don't think it's actually that good, but I think there have been some uses of it in Day 2. But it's never going to top cut a regional, in my opinion. It's just too underwhelming. Glade's weird. It did top 8 worlds, and that was really it. That's the only reason why I'm having it here on Diego's team. I can see some people using Diego's team and having some success with it, but Glade has seen no other usage otherwise. Oh, actually, it did have some usage on a Dawnwings team. Like, Glade in particular is only used on hard Trick Room comps. Like, Glade with Clear Emlet is really good at beating Ensign, and Ensign only, really. Wide Guard allows it to be like a niche Wide Guard option for all the spread moves in the format, and being able to hit Ensign and Cycle Cut to abuse your terrain with Indeedee and hitting stuff like Urshifu is also really good. But it's only used in these comps, and Hard Trick Room is not a super viable comp in the format, and it's not nearly as common as some of these other top threats. So I'm having that right here. Slowking. This one's really weird. I'm only putting it here though, is because I kind of saw the vision for it because it did day 2 worlds. It almost cut worlds. This guy named Daniel Walker had on a Kyogre team. It was a really strange team. It was like Kyogre, Indeedee, Slowking, Weezing Galar, and like a Bax. Super strange. But Slowking was like expanding force and Trick Room with Indeedee, which is kind of cool. Slowking resists Glacial Lance, which is nice, and it's also good versus comps like Koraidon and Zamazenta. But that's really it. I think it's just so particular. Like, it's kind of similar to Gallade, being like a Trickermon, like a very niche Trickermon at doing what it does and how it supports its team. So I'm having it no higher than this because it's only used on particular comps, and it's not nearly as good as anyone else. But it did day 2 worlds and almost cut. We almost had Slowking cut, which is pretty crazy. So he'll be right here. Next is Hitmontop. Hitmontop, again, another niche Wyguard option. It's kind of like a worse Manchow in how it is, in my opinion. Like, Intimidate's nice, but if you want to Intimidate, you have better options. Hitmontop is just for, like, Intim, Fake Out, Wyguard, right? It's a bit different in Manchow how it works. It's just slower. I think Manchow speed stat makes it a little bit better. You can also not get intimidated. Like, Manchow not being able to get intimidated and still KO instance quite nice. Being able to hit instance cool and all, but if you get intimidated, you can't KO them with close combat. And it's not very common. It's just a niche Wyguard option, and it's only seen some competitive play. Next is Gothitelle. Gothitelle is really weird in this format just because Perish is not viable. And there's a lot of ghost types like Calyrex in the format, but it had a top cut on a Koraidon comp in LA, piloted by Colin Heyer. He top 8 with it, or top 4 with it, and it was cool because Koraidon Gothitelle meant you can trap things and KO a Koraidon, or have the weather control in your favor if you trap things on the field. So that was kind of cool. But besides that, it was only using that one comp just because of how bad Gothitelle is versus Shadow Rider, and you can't pull a Perish in this format. So it was only working on one comp, and it did have a top cut, but after LI, didn't see any usage since, and I don't expect it to really see any more usage after. Okay, final tiering. I'm just gonna speedrun through this. Like, Mamoswine, it's like a worse Ursaluna form. It had one top cut at a special event. That was when Terra Electric Miraidon was a metagame. But with Terra Fairy and faster threats like Urshifu and Ogerpon in the format, Mamoswine cannot do its job. Hariyama, day 2 Worlds on a Groudon team. It was Thick Fat Wyguard. It was like Rocket Helmet. Really niche, but it was on a Groudon comp. And that didn't do amazing in day 2, but it's still day 2 Worlds. And there are better Wyguard options than this. I think I'd rather use a Hitmontop than Hariyama just because of the Intimidate ability. And Hariyama is just... I don't really know. I feel like I just rather use the other fighting type Wyguards. There's so many options, so I'm putting it down here. Arcanine. This is a worse Entei. Some people were using this on Zamazenta as a Chen-Pao abuser. And the reason why it's a worse Entei is that you can get intimidated, you can get faked out because you don't have inner focus, and you're forced to go from something like Terra Ghost. So it's not ideal. Like, offensively, it's really good, but being weak to instant and fake out, not ideal. Snorlax, similarly to Hariyama, Thick Fat, some people were using this as a Kali Ice answer, quote unquote, but it's just so passive. Like, Thick Fat can only get you so far because you're not damaging back to Kali Ice. You're clicking Yawn and stuff, which these Kali Ice teams can just ignore, will follow me and fake out the Snorlax, or you can close combat with Urshifu. Like, what is a Snorlax doing to Urshifu? You can Yawn at one turn, but you die close combat the next turn. So that's not great either. And the people that brought it to Worlds didn't do amazing with it either, so he's going to be down here. Tinkaton, if you were laddering before Worlds, you probably saw a Tinkaton Groudon team at 1700s. That was kind of scary, but I didn't see them at Worlds, and I'd never seen Tinkaton before this, or even now. I mean, it has like no usage. Like, it's kind of cool in theory because Mode Breaker Fake Out's nice versus Miraidon comms, and you wall Miraidon, D-Gleam, and Draco, but it's just too weak at what it does. It also has like no results, because I'm putting down here. Talonflame had only one event at NIC where Z got 9 fit, but I don't think you should be using this guy. I think it has no value compared to Whimsicott. Like, at least other guys that have done well in NIC of only one event have, I think, more particular cases than Talonflame. Talonflame just gets completely outclassed by Whimsicott. Like, if you want a fast Tail on Mon that beats the mirror with Light Screen, then you run this. Talonflame, this dies to Volt Switch, dies to hands, and has no value in the mirror. It only sets up Tailwind, it just dies. Glacier. Glacier has seen some usage, mostly from Asian players trying to make Koraidon work. And the way to try and make this work is Iron Defense Body Press, which is kind of cool because it means you wall Kali Ice. Like, if you get 2 Iron Defenses, you can 2-shot Kali Ice with Body Press, and you take no damage back from them. So it's really niche. Only using Koraidon comps though, but the people who have brought it didn't do well with it. And I think it's so particular for just your Kali Ice matchup. The Koraidon teams in the format are already notorious with the Kali Ice, and the way to deal with it is mostly Ditto. I think like the Ditto, Chi, Ogerpon way to deal with Kali Ice is better than Glacier in my opinion, because Glacier is so specific to only one matchup, where you only bring it versus Kali Ice, which is so particular, and it's not very good. Lano T, this one's sad. Lano Ice is better. Rillaboom Instant is too much for it. And yeah, it just is better ground types in the format. Lando T just can't get any damage going. It's had 0 results this season for that reason. Cerulege, this one's funny. Similar to how Chandelure is supposed to work, you're supposed to beat Koraidon and Zamazenta with this guy. I was talking to Raelian, who was one of the only Cerulege users ever in this format to use it. And they went like 10-4 with it, which is fine, totally fine score. But they said it was meant for the Koraidon and Zama matchup, but it didn't work. So if you're supposed to use this guy for a matchup that's supposed to work in, supposed to thrive in, it's not working, that's just not great. There are better options. I think Chandelure also has more tools than Cerulege with Trick Room. Trick Room is a bit more better than just bulk up. Like, Cerulege only has bulk up plus attacks. Chandelure at least has some utility options with Trick Room to help your other teammates. So again, it's similar to a Glacier where it's just a useless slot that doesn't do the job correctly. Kingambit, same thing. Joseph Ugarte used this on his Miraidon team. It's meant to beat Shadow Rider comps. He dropped it shortly after at Worlds because it didn't do the job, because it's Kingambit. Kingambit in this format doesn't do anything because Urshifu, it just beats it on its own. Fergraph is almost on every team, being a block priority. And stuff like Heart Flame can also just redirect Sucker Punch and kill back up Ivy Cudgel. Really hard to set up, really hard to execute. Brax, it was only used on the Daniel Walker team with that Slowking, but I'm putting it here because I have no idea what it does. Like, it doesn't do anything, in my opinion. Like, you lose to Urshifu, and you just get outpaced by everything. The Ice type means it's really awful in this format. Kali Ice only gets away with it because it has natural stats, and it just has the bulk and Trick Room. Like, Bax, I can't see it setting up. Like, you had a needy support for it, but it dies to any spread move, and you don't get any KOs back, especially when you get instant cycled, right? So I'm putting it here. This Bax here because it's only that Kyogre team, and I have no idea what it does on that Kyogre team. So yeah. Palmot. Some people were trying to make Palmot work before the regionals when they released the regulation, and people were pairing it with mostly like Kali Shadow, so you have a Rival Blessing plus that. But I think it's mostly a gimmick. Like, the only reason I'm putting Palmot here is that there are better fighting types for you to use, like Urshifu, and like even stuff like Iron Hands just do it better at just like supporting your Kali Shadow with Fake Out plus repositioning. I don't think Rival Blessing is nearly enough for a reason to use Palmot, just because going back to 50% is not even that great because you're going to die to any like priority move or another double up anyways after. So it also dies to stuff like Surgeon Strikes. Like, the gimmick that Palmot gives is not nearly enough to waste your slot on it, in my opinion. Indeedee Sneasler. Some people were saying after Reg H, Indeedee Sneasler will be back because Sneasler beats a lot, apparently. Like, Throat Chop can hit Shadow Rider, Direhog can hit like Terra Fair and Miraidon. But no, it doesn't, because Sneasler is super frail. It also doesn't beat Terra Fair and Miraidon because Miraidon will Electric Terrain anyways. You can't get put to sleep because of Electric Terrain, and it's just a gimmick. I think people were overhyping it because Regulation H was a lower power format, so it thrived there. It was also one of the fastest Pokemon in the format. Sneasler needs that burden to completely move faster. Like the focus assets we saw before won't work because there's a lot faster in it, like stuff like Flutter Mane, stuff like the restricted, like Miraidon will outpace it, Koraidon will outpace it. It's just too slow. Even Shadow Rider outpaces it, and you're forced to Terra. And when you want to sell Throat Chop to Calyrex, they have Follow Me, they have Intimidate, they have Terra to get around it, right? It's just not doing the job it once did in Regulation H, and I think it's really bad. And please don't use Sneasler. I'm not saying this because I don't want to get Dire Claw. That is one reason. But I also want you guys to not use it because it's bad. It's not going to work for you guys. So please listen. Muck, Gimmick, Moody. It's only used for invasion. And for like, it's usually Dondozo teams with Psych Up. And that's really it. It's not very good. This is like a global challenge tech only. Similar to Weezing Regigigas, I'm having Weezing lower than the other Weezing here because it's just worse Galar. Like the poison typing is not that good on its own. Like the fairy is good for Pickler and Miraidon and like Dark Urshifu, while the poison typing doesn't really give you any value here defensively. So it's mostly there because it's just a lesser form of Galar. And Regigigas here doesn't do that much. Like it has like Y-Guard, which is cool, but it's only paired with Weezing, and Weezing has better partners, right? Usually we'll just Shadow Rider and Dozo by itself is fine. You don't need Regigigas on there. That's just extra. Altaria Day 2 Worlds. It was paired with Sableye, and it's just a gimmick. Like, literally, the team was crazy. It was Gravity, Sableye, it was Sing, Altaria, it was Skill Swap Sableye. So after you set Gravity up, you could Skill Swap away your Prankster onto Altaria and spam Sing. And it was also paired on a Groudon team, so you had accurate Sings and accurate P-Blades. So it's more funny than anything. They didn't do amazing at Worlds, but did Day 2, and it was only used on that one Groudon team. I don't think it's that good. I doubt you can fit Altaria in any other team. You basically have to pray that you can pull that gimmick off. But with stuff like Follow Me in a format, you're not going to get those the skill swap off the way you want it. All right, next, Shiftry. Shiftry only works if your opponent doesn't know it gets Explosion. I made a video on this. It was really funny, but we lost half our games. It's not very good. And lastly, Pachirisu. I was gonna make its own tier for this, like saying only use if you're Sajin, because Sajin used this at Worlds and he went 5-3 with it. In theory, it's cool because you Volt Absorb, you can take the Electric Drift from a Rhydon, you Follow Me. I know I said earlier too that any Follow Me Mon cannot be below this, but the one person that brought Pachirisu who should have Day 2'd with it didn't even Day 2 with it, which is really sad. And I wish it was better, but I think that Rhydon teams just have more tools to outpace it. And there are better partners from Miraidon to also use because you're only use this on Miraidon, realistically. And yeah, that's going to be it. This was a really long video. And I actually had a original take of this tier list, but I didn't like how it turned out because I had a migraine this week and I haven't really been able to function. But I think this came out a lot cleaner and I'm happy with the tiering and hopefully you guys agree with some of my takes. And if you guys have any more questions and concerns and opinions, you guys can also leave down your opinions on what you think is right and how you would tier certain Pokemon. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today. I want to thank you guys again for all the support I've been getting. We hit 1K, which is insane. I've only had this channel for a little bit more than a week now, and I'm trying my best to upload as consistently as possible with any content you guys like and I like. So if you guys have any recommendations on what you guys want to see in the future, feel free to let me know. But I'm working on some more stuff, which I hope you guys will enjoy soon. And I'll keep you updated. But that's me for today, guys. And catch you guys later.